All right, everyone. Blind Spiral back for day or part two of day. Oh, I don't even know what day we are on. Five, four, six of the draft with the Webster Tigers. Got Morgan in the call with me, and the pick is in. Let's go ahead and talk about what it is. We've got to get. There's no sound on this. Oh no, this is so scuffed. Um, how do we make the sound exist? Oh, there it goes. Wow. I think I'm done with the NFL draft sound. Ever since Alan McNatt told me to start doing the NFL draft sound, things have been sketchy. But the pick is in. It's going to be Jordan Addison, the wide receiver here, taken by the Webster Tigers and Morgan here at 107. And we were talking about this just a second ago, but you're super happy with this pick at 107. Had 104, moved back, couple trades here and there, and then you've picked up pieces that you're really happy with, and I think other than maybe JSN, you said Jordan Addison was your guy, right?
Yeah, I was talking to Beeflin. I was trying to get Beeflin to tell me who he was taking. And just to show that I'm maybe a little bit more honest than I should be in this stuff. But I was like, if you take either JSN or Addison, it makes my choice a lot easier.
Yeah,
Because I'm taking one of them. You
right.
know, um, I think there is kind of a drop off after you get past JSN. There probably is a drop off after JSN, and then I think there's a steep drop off after Addison. I don't think Quentin Johnston's going to be anything. I hate the way he plays receiver. Um, I love the way he runs with the ball in his hands, but
Sure.
as a receiver, it's it's yucky to me. So um, really happy about Jordan Addison. I think he's going to get a big spot in this offense. I think the fact that the Vikings didn't draft any other wide receivers, and you know, I don't- everything I hear on media, I'm on the Wisconsin Minnesota border, is that people don't aren't too high on KJ Osborne. Um, their other receiver that's been getting some time is Naylor, and he was like a
Right.
sixth round pick. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, he's going to step into the number two spot, and he's good for some catches. He's not super electric. He's never going to be a guy who's, oh, look at that guy. He's going to go off for, 15, 1,600 yards in a season. He's not that guy. But I think he's got a quality career as like a number two for probably, at least 6, 7 years.
Do you think he's going to kind of be like the T. Higgins to Jamar Chase? Is that what you're hoping for? Or are you hoping? Are you even happy with someone who's not to pick another receiver from the exact same offense, but Adam Thielen? I mean, I've personally been a big fan of Adam Thielen as a consistent wide receiver too for the Vikings with Jefferson there. Are you just hoping he is just a plug and play replacement for him, basically?
I do like that comparison. It really strikes me. My wife's a Vikings fan, and she uh, we watched the draft where they drafted Justin Jefferson. And like before the pick, I'm like, I wonder if they try to replace Stephon Diggs here, and then they draft Justin Jefferson. So I think they literally do have that in mind of like hey, let's try to get a guy who's kind of similar. Not the same build, Jordan Addison's a little shorter and and smaller weight wise, but I think that's a lot of the ways their management thinks is, hey, we lost a superstar or a guy who used to be really good, and now we're going to bring this other guy in who can be similar, and try to bring that blast from the past there back.
For you personally, you mentioned that you think there's a tear drop off from after Addison, right? And so I know you said you don't like Quentin Johnson. Zay Flowers is there. You've obviously got a couple of there's the tight ends. There's what's his name? I can't remember all of a sudden. The quarterback. Wow, this is so bad. How do I not remember his name? Will Levis. There we go. Jeez. A lot of people. Cam Hood was saying he thinks it's a top five draft, and then a lot of people think top six. Do you consider Addison close enough to Jackson Smith and Jigba that you're happy, or are you like, damn, all right, well at least I'm getting the maybe A minus, or kind of where's your head at with that? Like, because everybody says JSN, or I guess not everybody, right? But popular opinion is Jackson Smith and Jigba is the best one here. Do you think that Addison has a chance to overtake him?
I think so. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba, he is a step above Addison, um, because he is just more explosive. I think he can do a lot more than Addison will be able to. And who knows, right? Because Jackson Smith and Jigba first day of practice could tear his ACL. and never be as electric as he
Right.
is. And Jordan Addison might, somehow, find it, at some point. So you never know, but like, judging at it from now, yeah, I think Addison's a solid receiver. He's not a Christian Watson type explosive playmaker, but he's a guy who's, he'll catch, 10-yard routes, 15-yard routes. Sometimes he'll break a tackle. Sometimes he'll, carry the ball for an extra 10 yards, right?
Right.
He'll get some, decent number of touchdowns. He's never going to be that number one guy, I don't think. Um, but judging from the outside in, especially in an offense where Justin Jefferson's going to be drawing all that attention, I do think Kirk Cousins like to throw to other guys because of that. Um, so uh, he might not ever be as good as like a Jackson Smith and Jigba, but he's going to be fine.
Right.
And he's going to
Very
be
one of
able to
those
stay.
super super high floor type deals is your perspective.
Yeah, that's right. I think he's got a high floor. Yeah.
When you look at how this draft has gone, you obviously made the move back from number 4 to number 7. You ended up with 112 in the process. What has been your strategy kind of coming into this draft? Because there have been a lot of holes to fill, I think is a fair way to say for your team for sure. But you've
Yeah.
you've definitely made the moves to do that, right? So you've picked up, and I'm scrolling back through the transactions here to get everything as accurately as I can. But Sleeper on the computer is an absolute disaster. But you've picked up Elijah Moore, Jacoby Brissett. You've also picked up Calvin Ridley and Sam Howell. You added Nico Collins in the restricted free agent process. Um, are you? Do you think this is kind of like stacking up your team to kind of help compete? Like, where do you like? How does that all sit with you? Because you've made just a couple moves, but really added some really good depth. Again, not that Brissett's going to be the guy or Sam Howell's the guy, but you've got a quarterback for this year for sure with one of those two. Elijah Moore going to the Browns should be really nice. Calvin Ridley should be really nice in the Jaguars. Like you've made some moves and you've added some people here. On a scale from 1 to 10, how do you grade yourself on how well you've done so far?
Um, I don't know. I'm always going to think highly of myself. But I got to be up there at least. I don't know if I want to give myself a number, but yeah, I mean, last year kind of sucked because like I thought like okay, I had pieces of guys who could produce pretty good points. But then one of them would get hurt. Javonte Williams got hurt right away, and it's like, well, that really hurts me because the guy replacing him is Alexander Madison. Like my bench strength wasn't there. So coming into this draft, and I obviously am gonna have a bench chock full of people because of all my picks. But
Literally,
um,
yeah.
when you look at it, I'm hoping that I've gone from having a guy step in who, for a guy who's projected to score 10, 15 points, somewhere in that range, and like, oh, it's their bye week, so I got to replace him. And hopefully it's a guy who's projected to get like 9 to 12 points instead of a guy who's projected to get like 4 because he might get thrown to once.
Right.
Get like a 30-yard pass, and that's what Sleeper's thinking. That's what other people are thinking. And then guess what? Oh, they didn't even get thrown to. So that depth piece is where I'm looking at, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, that depth piece is important, but you're looking at Gabe Davis, he's in a contract year. You got one chance to get paid in this league, and it's that second contract that you
Yeah.
sign. So if Gabe Davis, he's played enough to get money for multiple years, right? He's played well enough to get a contract after this point, but if he wants to get paid, he's got to do well.
Right.
Calvin Ridley, if he wants to have longevity in this league, he's got to come out, stomping. Christian Watson, I really hope he develops. Elijah Moore, hey, you haven't been great the last 2 years. You've done some really good things, but you've never gotten more than 600 yards, right? Your highest season is 538. So if
Right.
you want to stick in this league long term, right, you got to pop off. And if you're not going to do that, Rashid Shaheed, Saints didn't really add anybody at receiver. They added that one kid, I think A.T. Perry in the sixth
Right.
round. He's looking like a guy who might, pop off. So, that depth, and hopefully these guys explode.
And it's kind of cool the way you're looking at it too, right? So you're taking, and this is something different that we've heard from everybody that we talked to so far. You're taking a almost at a different light to it, right? Where this is a couple prove it years for these guys in the NFL. A lot of times, I think that we think about these things as, hey, this is a prove it year for you in fantasy. If you don't get it together this year, then I'm done. But you're talking about Gabe Davis, who's in a contract year, Elijah Moore, who's on a new team after being shipped away from not doing much, Raheem Shaheed, who they didn't draft a receiver. So here's your opportunity. That's a completely different way of looking at it than I think any of us kind of have. So thank you for sharing that because I just think that's really, really unique. Um, Speaking of unique, the 11 other of us, unless somebody has it that we don't know of, have no experience coaching. I have incredibly minimal experience coaching sports and football, and it's like none. But you have it. Do you think that that kind of gives you an edge to an extent in terms of how you look at and evaluate players? So almost like you're Quentin Johnson, you're saying you think he's a bust. A lot of people are probably going to take him at 8, 9 here, but you're like, I wouldn't touch him. Do you think that gives you an advantage over some of these other teams since you can kind of look at things from a different lens?
Well, you got the eighth pick. You can tell me if you're taking Quentin Johnson right here.
Oh, I just
Um,
traded the eighth pick for Christian McCaffrey.
oh, you did? Okay, yeah, okay. Well,
Yeah,
there's too
so
many trades today.
I know.
Anyways, yeah, I don't think it gives. I think it gives me just a different perspective. Not that it's better or anything, because there's all these draft metrics out there that a lot of people are more, uh, interested in. But I look
Right.
at Quentin Johnston and I see a guy. He doesn't attack the ball. The dude's 6'3". You need to attack the ball. He doesn't attack the ball. He's a hands catcher, right? And it makes me jaded, right? So like, there's a I might have certain things that I look for and be like, I really hate that about it because in my personal experience, guys who are like that suck. But the downside is Quentin Johnson might be literally the best, receiver in this class. He's okay speed, right? He is tall, right? So that kind of separates him with a lot. So you're sitting here with, and he might be a guy who becomes a top five guy, but I'm not going to touch him because of the two traits that me as a guy who does coach, tight ends and receivers, I hate those traits. I hate body catchers. I hate guys that don't attack the football. So, it's just a different perspective,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
It's a little too early to probably talk about this, but let's talk about it anyway. What do you think your plans are with 112? I mean, there's still a couple people that need to pick here, but you sit there right at the back end of the first round. Is that pick on the block? Are you looking at another guy? Do you think this is something that you would consider trading, or is it just going to be depending on how things fall? Like, where's your head at with that pick? And again, I know it's too soon. I know there's 4 more picks to go before we get to that point, but any thought to that as we're looking towards that now for you?
Um, we're gonna see how the board falls. You know, I'm not big into Will Levis. I don't like him. So I'll take that off the board. But I do need upgrades, right? I need depth all across the board, right? Like, my third running back right now is Alexander Madison, and he is, you know, um, who knows if
Right.
Dalvin Cook's going to be back, so you got that, right? You do have the fact that, I don't really have a bona fide second quarterback. I got Mac Jones, I got Sam Howell,
Yeah.
and
God
and
bless. And their
I have,
handcuffs.
yeah, and I have the handcuffs, because I come prepared. I'm a Boy Scout in that era. Um, you know, tight end. I love Juwan Johnson. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of Danny Bellinger. Problem is, for some reason, the Giants think that they need to bring in a guy who needs a walker to get down the field at this point, in Darren Waller and Juwan Johnson. They brought in Foster Moreau, right?
Right.
So I do think Juwan Johnson starts there, but it's like, okay, what's going on necessarily. So, tight end something, and then wide receivers. I went through it and I said, okay, here's all these aspects where I think these guys will do really well, but I'm still going to need some wide receivers. Like, I'm going to need guys there. So, so conceivably, I need somebody at every position, and that's why I got 19 draft picks.
Yeah.
So I got to hit at some point. Law of large numbers has to be on my side at some point. So, um, but
And
yeah,
that
like,
makes
I could
sense.
conceivably go everywhere. I'm probably not going quarterback though. So, in terms of if it's on the board, yeah, sure. If somebody wants to offer me something, if Levis is there, I'm not going to take him. But say like somebody else wants Levis and they want to secure that, yeah, I mean, throw an offer out. You
There you
know,
go.
um, anything's negotiable except for the fourth round. Mostly because I'm just stubborn at this point.
Well, I think my favorite fun fact of our first draft is there's only one pick that has not been traded, and that is the 4.4. So your fourth round pick is the only one that hasn't moved at all. Coming into the draft, when 101 was on the clock, I think there were 3 or 4 picks that hadn't been traded, and it's now just down to your fourth round pick. And I think it would take a lot to get that away from you. I
Oh
can only
yeah.
imagine what the cost of it would be. Something irrational, I'm sure. But that's the fun of it, right?
Oh yeah.
The last question I have for you are fill in the blank question. Bit of a different one, just because I feel like there's a lot of people who are um, not curious, but there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out what you're doing, right? A lot of the trades that you've made, some people question, some people love them. I remember when we had Cade and Code, the two of them in particular were huge fans of yours. I'm a huge fan of yours and your team. I know K makes is always a little outspoken in the chat, which makes it fun. But so there's two sides of the coin of is are the Tigers playing chess when we're playing checkers, or are they playing checkers when we're playing chess? So just to out of curiosity, from your perspective, fill in the blank. At the end of the season, the Webster Tigers finish what place in the division?
Second. I,
Second.
I I'll give it to Al. I think there's going to be some battles. It kind of depends on how the schedule falls with me and Allen in that sense.
Mhm.
I do think um, that by the end of the season, I am lowest in points. I went through it on my phone and looked at and added up people's points.
Mhm.
And right now I'm lowest in the points. Um, but that's with a lot of not that's with right now and not really taking into development into account and stuff like that and all the other stuff I talked about. um so betting that stuff happens, I'm saying second. The hard part is at what point in the year does it happen.
Right. Yeah. Where do
So
things take off?
um
Yeah. Well, I think it's
so
also
I'm
the
think
great thing about those dart throws, right? You've got, is it, how many, I think you got the 13 fourth round picks, a couple in the third. So you're in a situation where if two of those hit, that's a win, right? I mean, it's for how often they just almost kind of got thrown into the trade. If 2 or 3 of those picks hit, you're in a really good spot, I think.
and there's yeah, that gives me a lot of strength, and it gives me, I can pick through stuff. And one guy I just realized going on my roster that we haven't even talked about is Calvin Austin. He
Yeah.
was viewed as like one of those steal picks last year, but he missed because of IR.
Right.
So who knows about him, right? So like that, I got a lot of dart throws, right? Which also lets me have some depth, right? I'm gonna look at this, especially in the fourth round, when I really don't have to compete with anybody, and I can really just have my pick of the litter. I can really, my strategy in the fourth round is going to be okay. Who are some guys that might not do much this year, but I
Right.
really think could be something in a year or two and really develop? Because I'm probably going to try to sign my guys to 2-year deals in those fourth rounds for most of them. That might screw me with cap wise because it's just such a load of them, and I'm gonna have to end up cutting them, or cutting some of them. But at the end of the day, um, I'd like to have that ability to have them for a couple years and see how they go, and that's really what's going to shape my back end of the draft.
Well, it makes complete sense too. And as we get to that fourth round, you and I'll talk about it, what that looks like for your cap too. This way, you can make the most informed decision. So that is
Yeah.
going to do it for us, though. I appreciate the time, especially too. You're at you have a groomsman dinner here, I think, in an hour or so. So I guess this is the wedding weekend with you and K makes both out and about doing stuff. But I appreciate you taking the time to poke in and talk.
Yeah, man. Really, really, really happy about it.
Yeah, and we'll talk to you soon. We probably won't do a whole nother video because we got to talk to Rick and Chase, and they don't have picks in the first. Well, Chase is 113 and all that. Well, he's the next one too. I don't know. There's a lot going on, but we'll probably check in as we get closer to 112 and see what that looks like for you. But otherwise, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Yeah. Good talking to you.